You ready to hear the real problem with Cascadia that I've written? From the author himself, Ghost Liberty. Are you ready to hear it? It's ideologically dictated in my constitution, all these things. It's going to be this way. It must be a certain way, right? It doesn't leave it open for that choice to really be made any other way. Now, yes, people could line veto out what they want. They can cut lines out of it. They can cut sections out of it. They can rewrite it. And that's all about the open source movement behind it. Like, it's not a pure dictatorship, but it is an ideological dictatorship. And it's like a cult of personality without having the actual person be the real cult. But the ideology behind the political and economical motivations, that is the cult, right? And a constitution has the potential to have a cult following, like it has in the United States, and that's not even a very political document considering a left or right ideology. It's a little more authoritarian than we would prefer, but it's still moderately centrist. And my work, while it is closer to the individualist spectrum, its applications more to left than right in standard political compass, we take a third path in distributism too, but like just the concept of having micromanaged and dictated every single thing in there is going to turn a lot of people off. That it's pre-decided. Now, that's supposed to be a strength of the work, because if we know how something's going to function before it exists, or at least on paper it's supposed to function a certain way, then we can more reliably predict the outcome, or we can grade the outcome against the intention and then correct the system. But getting people to agree on the specifics of everything, especially because it is a heavily socially democratic, welfare state-oriented place. It's got distributism, but it's hard-coded in. It's not just like a marketplace of ideas, libertarian idealism of a self-correcting system that chooses the best path. It is directed in its path. It's paternalistic in that way. And I would say probably one of the reasons why it's paternalistic is it's my baby. I want to prescribe a perfect political system, not because I think I'm perfect, but because I've seen all the failures of the current system. I've seen how it's failed on the left and the right. I've seen how the economic system is not even really capitalist and it's failing. And if you were to take how it is capitalist and then that's got its problems, and if you were to switch the inversion into socialism, that would have more problems. And like the lesser of two evils, when there's a better path, I found out about distributism. There's even more than that. There's a website I found a long time ago that had like 7 different potential economic systems that were not socialism or capitalism. And it went over all these different economic systems. And I thought that was very useful to understand there are better ways, or at least alternative ways. And if we don't try those, we're preventing ourselves from potentially growing in a bigger way, especially with post-scarcity economics, which I don't think was in that list, but that's like the zeitgeist movement. It's been talking about the Venus Project almost, but not quite, because that's all like AI and a commons-based system of a commonwealth on Mars even, and that's a very different idea where they would have a completely separate society than us on Earth, even though there might be communications that are delayed by minutes, so they might have social media from Earth available that's cached onto a local internet system upon access, that makes it like a cloud network, a distributed data, and each person who watches it is also like a peer in the system, so it adds to the quality of the network. Like, there are obviously ways to, we already are using some of this with torrenting, and we can improve civilization, society, and data access on the public level with free internet, and that's the kind of thing I worked on, and Anonymous has been working on, in the Venus Project, the Zeitgeist movement, have been working on, and other people, the political independents, have been working on. But when I micromanage and prescribe all the stuff into the Constitution, it makes it ideologically rigid. So those are at least the beginning of the reasons why it's a problem, even though I can try to justify it however I want. You can say, I believe I have a Republican requirement in order to make the best choice for my people, or who could be the people in the future, to give them a better possible world to live in, and that's my duty. And I took that so seriously that I ended up becoming part of the legislature and just incorporating legislature into Cascadia's constitution, fixing decisions more permanently than if they were just left to the fungibility or the flexibility, I guess, of like the legislation, where you can swap one piece out for another. I mean, they're not like interchangeable per se, but the swappability of one piece of legislation for another. I think it's a strength and a weakness, what I did. The strength will be, fundamentally, you will know how the system works based on its prescription. It has been prescribed at a very detailed level. So questions of its operation are usually answered inside of it already. There is at least self-referential answering material inside of that work, because there's definitions and clarifications. And sometimes they're put in line to a provision, although my preference is to have more universal definitions that can apply all through the entire thing. And why we have definitions and clarifications is not to write a dictionary per se, but is really just to make it so that the function of the government is not based on some flexible, up to the times in we're being that it's a living constitution per se already almost. It's a moral constitution, and the spirit of the law over the letter of law, so that does add to the level of it being considered a living, eternally living constitution. It is amendable. It's more democratically accessible. We added the third branch of Congress, which is the people's branch, not the House of Representatives, the actual people themselves, in initiative and referendum within the confines of government power. So they're not allowed to exceed the powers of Congress without, of course, amending the document itself and specifically tailoring it that way. People do have certain prescriptive powers above the common legislature, by the way. So that is sort of already done in very specific areas. I just believe my own personal best, what I think is the most correct way, the most sound way. I'm autistic, so I'm going to fixate on things. But I do know it's my problem. It could be other people's problem. Because of the nature of politics, that when I have an idea pop in my head, I try to flesh it out and see, is it good and how could it improve, and maybe we should implement this and we should put it in this system so that it can be operated as a standard of norm. And that's a problem. That's like a reverse of a normalcy bias. That's like saying, this is what I think is normal, so everyone should think it's normal, which is wrong, right? Instead of everyone is normally this way, is how you perceive things. It's like, I think this is normal, so you should have to do it this way instead of... And we did not necessarily make it so that you have to's, you musts, or you shalls are for you. They're the government, mostly. But like, you can't violate the rights of another person, and that's pretty prescriptive the way I made it. And defining justice and everything, there are like reasons why defining it is not a perfect way to do things. Because when the Supreme Court looks at it later, they'll say, this is this rigid definition. The spirit of the definition is all that must be looked at further. And that could still make a lot of good decisions come. I think one of the nice things about the courts, when they're done in the most like intellectually honest and the most like common good sort of way, can really benefit people in political philosophy. Like, they're useful mechanisms to understand the world, at least in the political and the economic realms. So just take what I'm saying, understand, like, I have a little bit of shame writing my Constitution because of over-prescription. Have I done the right thing? I have doubt. Did I make the right choice? When I look at it later and I see it could improve it, and I see the small details and how they're wrong and how it could have been made better, I go, yeah, I did have undersights. Definitely undersights. And I also overthought things sometimes that really should not be there. And I want all of you who may see this in the future, like, this is kind of my captain's log. I want all of you to steer the ship in the right direction. I want you to actually create the blueprints if I fail in particular. I want you to amend this to make it right, because I can't do it all. And I'm really maybe trying to be a superpower in that way. And this is perhaps the issue with government itself, the fact that I overprescribe. Maybe I have the best intentions and still do it wrong. Imagine somebody with bad intentions doing it. Or imagine that even if you did it right, the problem of overprescription itself is that there's just at least a minimum of paternalism involved with it, but also this idea of dictatorship, where it becomes an idea that you have a perfect idea, that you must then prescribe the idea for all to be living through that idea, which is not necessarily a moral basis to operate on. But should we ditch all government? I don't think so. Should we say because there's flaws in the ideology I espouse that it's not a usable, functional today? We don't know. We don't know. All we know is that way things have been going are not really working for us. With crony capitalism, with wealth capture, with corruption, oligarchy, autocracy, kleptocracy, kakistocracy. We've seen it through Bush Jr. We've seen it through Trump. We've maybe seen it in other cases. If you want to say like LBJ, it's possible. And there's another guy I forgot his name of. Is like kind of 70s or something. But I'm not gonna say I lean left or right. Most specifically, I would say I lean left. But really, my ideas come from this want of the best possible world. I think I'm a good example of an individualist who's also trying to find independence and trying to establish the independence for all and promote people's independence and also promote people's self-sufficiency, and when people are unable to make their own ends meet, to promote their welfare and to do this for the general welfare and the common good. So that's the motivation behind it. Is it a perfect idea? No. Will there ever be one that's perfect? People believe in God, they'll say God's ideas are perfect. Can any man have perfect ideas? We could say no, because no men are infallible. The fact that the ideas I have written in Cascadia have been permutated over and over and over again, so many versions, so many times, rewritten, reverbed, retooled, articulated, more correct, whatever, working it to its final end, proves it's a system of gradual refinement, which is why, of course, the Founding Fathers put in the power of people, and the power of states and the right of the people to amend the Constitution. Right, the sovereignty of the people is directed through the states that the people give the power to through their common will and consent, and that's just the basis of, like, let's call it an American-style system, which is what my thing represents. But I want to break away from the United States of America and make Cascadia. I'm not a white nationalist. Some people worry about it, like I said, on the left. I think that, like, when it comes to racism in general, I don't think I'm better than anybody else. I think we should all be equals, at least philosophically. When I see another person, I don't believe I'm better than them. If I see reasons why they don't meet my standards, that's a little different. But, like, not racist fundamentally. I do think some racial stereotypes are funny, though. Like, Asian women being bad drivers, but also Asian men being good doctors. Like, I think those are kind of funny. I'm not trying to be racist. I just think that it's, intellectually, honestly, there's something that the absurdity, but also some reason of the stereotype being true that makes it funny. So don't worry, because it's not absurd for Asian to be a good doctor, just like other people can be good doctors too. Maybe one of the reasons it would be true is that it's just more like social and familial upbringing and stuff. Like, they were pushed more likely to be academic if they're Asian, maybe, because it's a stereotype Asians say it is real. So, whatever, man. You don't have to hate anybody for who they are unless they don't meet your standards of decency. Then I recommend not hating them, but just not accepting them. That part of them, and then accepting that's the way it is, because it is what it is. And then if you really can't move past it without compartmentalizing it, maybe discharge it for later, unless it's some sort of dire need for your safety or true understanding to do it then. But just, like, try to live in the moment when you're with people in general, and don't work on the fundamental basis of how are they different than me, more than, like, we have a lot in common, you see. So when they work against our common good, then you have reasons to know that it's not so right. Anyway, I'm not this is my problem. I prescribe, or I'm trying to give a advice thing. And so, like, maybe my Constitution, while it would be law and should be followed to the letter, pretty much, in the spirit of the truth, of course, is whatever you want to take that in, the words I've written. But definitely as a piece of advice. A strong advisory. This is what I believe to be the best way. It doesn't meet Marxism. It doesn't meet libertarianism direct on 100% of things, but it does even mention it as part of the virtue in it. It's not anarchistic, really, but it does have some radical liberty ideas inside of it. Try not to be cruel and brutalistic, but there are reasons why we do believe you have the right of defense in war as an individual against any tyrant, actor, public or private, oppressor, as they are a common criminal against your rights. including to justice, and that means also the rules of natural justice. And that's all the stuff I think is important. So, we've had governments across thousands of years of time, and every single time they've occurred, there has been the prescription of what they believe is the better way or the best way or something to do things as the standard. And that's what I've done. Love it or hate it. I'm not an anti-statist. I'm an anti, let's say, interventionist. Or interference, even better word. Like intervention, consensual intervention is always fine, because consent is involved. Especially when it's non-coercive in any of its nature. So it's like, you have right to help. We don't necessarily say right to help, but like, if you want, you can access help we're trying to give you. You have the right to say no, and if you want it, you have the right to access the consensual help, and we're gonna try to maximize your individual autonomy in the entire process. And I don't really see any problem. So you have to remember, like, those are the fundamental axioms that I operate off of. But we do have wealth caps, and we do have this idea of, like, there will be public farms that you own for life, or not own, but like you have access to for life, and you make your own property on that, and you can sell it for your own profit, and the state doesn't take any of it. And trying to like use that to promote local agriculture and food sovereignty and stuff, and make it so that if there was a real disaster, then it would be easier to prevent an entire collapse of society. Although it's more agrarian and distributist, and it does meet with bioregionalism, and also has social democratic values, and we also call it a form of a republic. It's a republic with a third branch, in that the people have direct democratic power within the confines of power the government is retained in, so that they do not violate the rights of others. And I think it's a pretty good system. It's a more idealized system. It's a realization of American values to the highest degree, especially what we would say like modern day today. American values, including compassion for others, and like, it's not just an American value, obviously. Some people say American value is brutality. I don't believe that. Not the America I know here in Eugene, Oregon. Beautiful blue skies on this fall day out here. Very nice. But the reason why I made this video was really to talk about the weaknesses and the problems with my work, and what I actually see as faults in it. Overprescription being the main one. Also, like, I don't know if I'm actually right. I don't. It just feels right to me. So if somebody was like, give me a perfect legal system according to you, I'm like, well, this is running under philosophical axioms that I do believe are perfect, or at least the best we can get on certain stipulations. Here they are, and try that. Do I think everything in there is literally the best way to do things? I don't know the best way to do things, or I would have done a better job. But it definitely meets in the middle somewhere. And maybe is better than meeting in the middle. It's taking the third path. It's combining the left and the right and fusing them into another dimension, and then maybe going farther than either left or right could go on its own. If that makes sense. But, hey, not trying to sell it. Trying to tell you why not so good.